seeing stuff I'd never seen before. I've actually never been on a tour because every time I was out there for the con or whatever, it was just never like,
oh,
you know what I mean?
I didn't realize that. You never,
Yes, I never got a chance to do it because most of the time people were just busy at the con, and so I was like, well, who's going to even go out there with me? And it just never landed right, so I haven't actually done that until now.
Yeah, the big theater's really cool. The meeting rooms, like the larger conference rooms, are all themed out cool, and
yeah,
a lot of statues obviously everywhere. And
yeah.
At BlizzCon they drag them all to the event anyway, so there's no statues if you go at that time.
Yeah, that's true. The one that really impressed me was the Gorehowl axe that was in the entryway. That used to be, it was in that New York. The New York, I think it was for Warlords actually. So
yeah, I'd never seen that because that was after my time, obviously.
But. Yeah, so they moved it back in there, and that thing is so big you could hang like 4 grown men on there. It was wild, absolutely cool. But it was a nice time, and hopefully in a few minutes anyway, everybody will find out what the hell I've been signing NDAs for. All right, let's see. We got Greg on camera. You're looking good. We got to get Faye in there.
My volume okay, Scott?
Yeah, you sound great. 1 second here. Okay. I thought I had this laid out, but I got to tweak it real quick here. Audience, if you're here and with us. Oh, I need to bring up the chat. Hold on 1 second. I'd like to get the real-time feedback. Here we go. Okay. I had this laid out, but oops, that's me. All right, ignore me. Chat room, pop out. Okay, we're almost there, folks. What am I missing? Anything? No. And then we'll give Faye her own little window here.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you get your own special window. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, awesome. And then I just need to crop you real quick. Only take a second. There you are. Okay. We are nearly there, folks. Oh, who says folks anymore? What am I, 100? I don't know why I do that anymore. Is folks still the thing to say? Can you call people folks?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's regional.
That's my go-to these days. I hope it's okay.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I say y'all and folks. Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that.
Gentle beings.
I think it's like Gen Z uses chat as their sort of like fourth person pronoun.
Is that their thing?
Dating herself significantly. Yeah, it's like chat. Is this real? Right.
What do you think, Kat?
We can talk about that. We can talk about trying to be like fluent in internet, which is a generational thing.
Yeah,
well,
but it
right?
changes, right? Yeah, Gen X people, millennials, and Zs all talk different about this stuff, I think.
Yeah.
I'm down with that.
When we're Gen X, we have to pretend we understand what Gen Z is saying.
That's right.
A big chunk of our audience.
And even when we know, we still look like we don't. You know what I mean? I'm learning a lot about what it means to visually age and then what people assume from you when you do that. It's a lot of fun. Gen X for life. All right. Okay, I think we're good. Let us begin. And let's see here. Okay, we are recording. We've got audio. We are recording video. That's working too. Everything is checking out great. So here we go. In 3, 2, 1.
Fantastic Pixel Castle and Frog Pants Studios presents Word on the Street with Greg Street and Scott Johnson.
Welcome, one and all, to another episode of Word on the Street. This is our 10th episode, which means, because this is monthly, this is a 10-month endeavor so far. Greg, how does it make you feel?
Amazing. I think it's gone kind of fast, if you ask me.
Yeah, 10 months went real quick to me. I don't know. I feel like time's like that in general, but it feels like as soon as the month is over, bam, we're here doing this again. We're having a great time. We post it, and then I realize, oh my gosh, 10 months has gone by. It's almost been a year. Somebody has gone from got pregnant, had a baby, and we're a month into it already. Think of that.
That's true.
Yeah. See, that's how you tell time. You do it by pregnancies. Anyway, Greg, it's great to have you back. Of course, Greg Street here. I'm Scott Johnson, and we are here to talk about all things Fantastic Pixel Castle. And we have somebody joining us today who I'm very excited for everyone to meet. I've been able to, have a bunch of offline interaction and behind the scenes stuff going on. But we have the current community director, Faye V, on with us. Faye, welcome to the show.
Me. I'm really excited to be here too. It's been a lot of fun to kind of watch this happen behind the scenes and be a part of it and hang out in the chat and encourage wholesome chaos. And now I actually get to be on screen.
That's right. Ooh, I like the term wholesome chaos. That's
I love that. Wholesome chaos.
Yeah.
Maybe we just named our game.
Yeah, that's it.
There it is.
Yeah. Forget about Project Ghost.
Done.
Yeah, it's a wholesome chaos. No, it's great to have you here. We're going to talk about community in particular and how, in the world of MMOs, how does one communicate with your player base and do it in a way that gives them equal opportunity to sort of express what they want as players and still carry your vision forth and to be that kind of middle person that has to sort of, things have to sort of pass through. There's the other interesting aspect about FPC and about Ghost so far, and that is this very open development communication you're already having with the community and what that does to change the traditional, community methods perhaps that other companies do or others are maybe used to. So we're going to get into all of that stuff. Before we do though, Greg, I wanted to check in on how stuff's going playtest wise. You guys have been at it for a while. Are you pretty happy with how things are going and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I still would say we're a little ahead of where I'd hope to be, which is great. We're at the point now where we're going to do playtests outside of the studio every month, maybe forever, but at least for the next 4 months we have stuff lined up. Our September playtest is going to be really small. I say this by way of saying, please don't send us messages saying you're happy to playtest. We will ask for those when we're ready. We're not yet ready. This first one's going to be like 25 people, but it is important for us because we have to start to solve issues like how do people, we're on VPN all the time. So how do we have playtesters outside of VPN? How do we make sure they can download the game? Even things as simple as, when Faye puts up videos and screenshots, you just see all of our names there, but we don't really want our playtesters all to be kind of outed that way. So
Sure.
We actually had to go build the system that lets people like name their account in game so that it's not just Greg Street up on the screen.
Up above your head or whatever in your character.
Right.
So last we spoke about this, obviously we were dealing with a lot of sort of stand-in assets and stuff, just trying to iron out the moment-to-moment gameplay and that sort of thing. Any like jumps forward that you want to mention? Anything that's happened since then where you're like, oh, guess what, guys? You can loot corpses now and it's or whatever. I don't know where you're at with all that, but I'd love to hear.
It's still all stand-in assets. We have one 3D artist and one animator and one environmental artist. So we're not at the point yet where we can pour a bunch of content into the game. The biggest change from, I don't know, the last time we talked about some of the screenshots we posted is we have the Blue Zone concept really built out in the game now. So there's this really fun moment that I was always looking forward to where you step foot into a Blue Zone for the first time and you kind of look around and take stock of like, okay, what do we got here? Or is it a mountain? Is it a desert? Are there forests? Are there ponies? Like that, I think is always going to be a really important part of the game loop of stepping out into the portal or crashed landing or however it is that we decide to show it. And then seeing like, okay, what do we have in front of us? What is our objective? Because that's, that is a big part of the game. So I'm excited that we have that, that feeling in right now.
That's an exciting thing, probably, to see a little fruition on one of your core concepts. That really was foundational
cool
to this whole thing. You must have just walked in there and went, "Oh, we can do this," or "My idea was a good idea." That sort of thing. It's very fulfilling.
One of our designers posted a screenshot last playtest of like, "I found the most beautiful Blue Zone." I'm like, "Yes, that is exactly what we want. We want the community to be out there saying, 'Look at this! You've never seen this craziness before.'"
Sure. Faye, do you your time so far in the playtest? I assume you're participating. Are you excited and impressed with where
Participating.
where
She runs the playtest for us.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
even better. So, what's that like for you?
Collaborate. It takes a village. I think it takes a studio. Really, is the saying as it applies to making games. But I really enjoy it. It's the most just like wonderful group of people to make a game with, and typically a community manager comes in a lot later in the process. You know, there's this and we can get into this too, but like at least what I've experienced is that there's quite a bit of like this quiet development that happens where everybody's like, don't talk about what we're doing. We really want to have that big reveal, and that big reveal can be so impactful and so important. And then you bring in the community managers and the marketing team and publishing and things like that to kind of really continue to drive that interest and then start to run larger and larger playtests. But usually by this point, I'm not at like somebody with my job is not at the studio yet. So it is really interesting to get to see things that are so early and watch the process of it grow from this stage. I think it's really cool. I think I'm seeing tons and tons of progress every week. That is just shocking to me. The amount of stuff that changes or improves or gets more stable is really cool. I've already gotten to start the process of like making patch notes internally for the company too. And that's always a lot of fun we can kind of go back and track like, oh, this is, when we introduced this thing and this is when we noted that it was broken. And this is when we tried to fix it the first time and now it's actually fixed, and it gives us that really nice timeline. So I'm having a blast. I don't know. I think I have one of the coolest jobs in the world. I get excited to come to work every day, so that's kind of a privilege for me.
Sure. Yeah, and also I feel like 20 years ago, let's say, I'm just trying to think of a random time period in gaming, but even 20 years ago on other big MMOs, the EverQuests and the WoWs of the world at those stages, it felt like the communication paths between community managers and actual players in the community was a much more simplistic single pipe kind of method. It was, here's a blog, here's a post, here's what we changed, here's a bunch of change log stuff, here's maybe a new skin we introduced in the game or whatever it is, and then done. That's kind of your connection. And players that go off to their individual forums or other places, and sometimes forums themselves were the place where this would happen, but we could not be in a more different place now, just technologically in terms of how we communicate. So I guess I would ask, are there any unique challenges in the year of our Lord 2024 where you need to be that communication layer between what's being built and made and the folks who are anticipating it? Are there unique challenges now that didn't used to exist, or do you think this is the best time ever for that sort of thing? And how toxicity comes into it, and how all of these kinds of issues. It just feels like that's the most 2024 question I could ask, and I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear your overall take on that.
It's interesting. I think I would kind of say yes to that. There are definitely unique challenges that we're seeing today in 2024 with games, and also it's one of the best times, in my opinion, to be a community manager. Mm-hmm. I think the world between player and developer is a lot closer, especially with the proliferation of software that allows people to really kind of think about, what if I did go make my own game?
Sure.
Right. So there used to be a bit of it's kind of gone in waves, right? I remember when I first started playing MMOs, probably, long before I should have been on the internet, because I was playing them with my dad. We played Lord of the Rings online together. Call back, right?
Great.
But you could the games were smaller and the companies were pretty small, and so you could have this kind of back and forth on like forums and stuff with the person who like designed a feature, and then that dipped and you didn't have that same access anymore. And now with the advent of Discord, forums are returning. Everybody's real excited to see forums come back, right? Yeah. You do have that access again to developers. And I think that's actually what a lot of devs want, is to really get in there and hear like, oh, you do or don't like this feature. Why don't you like it, or do you like it? And what are the ways that you're using it? Are you using it in the way that is intended? And part of my job in like sitting in the middle of that at this point is not to completely manage the communication pipeline, but to build the spaces where that healthy communication can take place, to help people on both sides set very healthy boundaries to make sure that they're having really positive interactions and that everybody feels good walking away about like how feedback was given and received, even if it can't be implemented. And that's one of the most important parts of my job is helping to translate feedback. You know, I think of myself as very privileged to get to work on a game that players are going to want to play. Like it is my honor to be a part of that process and to help them bring that to them. And in that also, there's the line of sort of saying, we really appreciate your feedback. Let's see where that works into this like multi-year plan vision of the game. Does it fit with what we're actually planning to build? And if not, how do I reflect that back to you in a way that that still encourages you to give feedback again? Because that's that really interesting balance, right? I care a lot about feedback.
Yeah.
I care a lot about making those paths between developer and player really like open and healthy and communicative.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Greg, in your mind as studio head and having a lot of experience in this, and you know, we could go back as far as your Age of Empire days where it was very much you're either in the forum or you're not, and that's it. There's no social media the way it is today and that sort of thing. How important is it to a studio head like yours to have somebody like Faye and have, I don't know, the ability to forward think about this and see these changes as they come? And if it comes down to it and we all need VR headsets to talk to each other about the status of the game, be ready for that. You know, this sort of thing. What's the importance of community for you?
I was thinking about it, and like when I got into this business, developers were talking to like the buyers. They were talking to like GameStop, you know, the people who are going to buy your game and put it on the shelves.
Yeah.
And then that kind of went away. And then we were talking to the journalists, like someone who's writing for PC Gamer or whatever. And now and community was always viewed as another marketing angle of like, well, if we can get good buzz about our game out there, then that'll help with sales. And I really think about it totally differently of like, we want the community because we want to make our game good. And if there's a problem with our game, man, I'd much rather hear that before we ship, you know, before it's out there. Because you think about the history of so many MMOs and it's like, oh yeah, it was really fun, the leveling experience. And then I got to endgame and I kind of ran out of things to do. And, you know, no one designs the game to be that way. So I'd much rather hear now when we have time to fix it than, oh, we've launched and people like stop playing the games. They've run out of stuff to do.
Yeah, that's good. Actually,
as a partnership, you know, with players, like I really want to hear what they like, what they don't like, what they'd love to see. That's not the same as letting the community design the game. And I know there's a slippery slope there, but
sure,
that's kind of how it's always felt to me.
Well, that's interesting because I think a lot of players, I could be wrong about this, purely my own observation, but I think a lot of players in a very cynical space, which sometimes can be MMOs, I think they all just assume that whatever the devs are going to do, they're going to do, and that their feedback maybe doesn't matter that much. And so a lot of times it feels like the community people, somebody like Faye, and in some companies, you know, they have whole teams. FPC is probably looking down the barrel eventually, more people working with her.
We might grow to that point.
You very well might. I'm guessing you probably will. And getting the minds of gamers away from just assuming that their feedback doesn't really matter, that it's all just, you know, nice talk to say, players, we hear you. You know, that whole thing of like, they don't really hear us. They're just going to do what they're going to do. I think that's a pervasive thing. And so based on that, I'm curious, Faye, about the following, and I'm going to use this as kind of a lead into a question I wanted to ask you anyway, but also we got a listener who wrote in and asked this very question. And it's about what exactly a community manager does, and more pointedly, what one will do here. with this company, with its philosophies and its plans. So here's how the question goes. It's from somebody named Ponderous Keys, which is an amazing name, and I hope they never not use it. This is really great. Hey guys, love the show. Each month was wondering, what, if anything, FPC plans to do differently with community outreach and dealing with players and their wants and needs. Excited for the next one, says Ponderous Keys. First of all, what do we, I guess, Faye, if you had to define what a community manager even does, and then what are you bringing to it to make it different this time?
That's a really exciting question, because I would say that based on the studio needs, a community manager is a different role at every company. Some community managers handle a lot of social media. Some don't handle any social media. Some are really grounded in like the Discord day to day. They're running moderation teams. They're working with player support on player behavior. Some don't really touch that. They are more marketing. So, and I've some even just work on events and esports and things like that. There are different ways to be a community manager based on kind of what the company wants or what the studio wants. So, and I've done a bunch of different things. I've done trust and safety. I've done events and esports and things like that. And now I'm here. And I would say what we're doing differently here, we're already doing it. We're really taking just sort of peeling off the Band-Aid, I suppose, pulling back the curtain and saying like, hey, the game looks a little bit ugly right now. There's our assets and art aren't in there, and we've got these broken ponies that we finally were able to put back in the game because they're not like stalking players across blue zones anymore. And we want to show you that, right? We want to invite people to be a part of the joy and the laughter and the frustration and the excitement of game development. And that's already really, really different. And it's a real privilege to get to be the person that helps to create the jokes and the memes and get in there and laugh with people and see the fan art as it comes in and stuff like that. I think that's kind of where that sits from the point of view of like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
In terms of feedback, I think what we want to do is be very present in not just saying like, oh, because let me restart. Every company collects feedback.
Yeah.
And not just in games, but every product service. When you're scrolling through Instagram and they're like, did you like that video or something like that? That's right. That's feedback. Or you get a survey request from Facebook or something like that. That's their feedback. And for a lot of companies, especially if they're huge, like giant, managing these massive pieces of software or IPs or a lot of partnerships, that is the best way for them to get feedback. So from a community manager, if you get a survey request and you want your voice heard, take it. Take the survey.
Yeah.
They take it seriously.
Yeah. That I assume that data is really useful. Like, it
is.
It's easy for us to see those things and flip past them on TikTok or something, but I'm guessing that they're asking for a reason. It's probably very helpful just to do a quick answer and say whatever. Yeah. And
then when you think about like the larger a company or a game gets, and talking back about games now, the larger a game gets, the more people are playing it, the more people have access to that survey. So it's important to remember, even if we're in especially if we're in slightly smaller community spaces, but even in the largest ones, those spaces don't always necessarily reflect everybody who plays.
Right.
So that survey data that's taken in is looked at on scale. It's looked at broken down by demographics, and that's important too. Knowing like, oh, we've done this really, really well, but I don't know, somebody like all of our players from France were kind of not happy with the way we portrayed this thing about this character. We probably want to look into that. And it doesn't necessarily give us this like, oh, we need to go fix something immediately. Oh God, jump on it. But it suggests exploration. Does that make sense? Where we say, this discrepancy is really interesting. Let's go look at this.
Yeah.
And that's a really big part of like what I do working with a product team or player support or even designers, is we say like, hey, we're getting this feedback coming in from the community. Does it reflect what we're seeing in the game and the way people are playing the game in this area? And then we can go look at it and try to figure out where that that discrepancy is.
Yeah. The key seems also to be the fact that you're doing this in real time. Like I'm used to the idea of somebody saying, "Oh, somebody on Reddit found out there's a bug with this or that," and then it goes quiet because it's off to the team. They do their thing. They're made aware of it. They're not really talking about it necessarily, and it might show up in a patch note later. What you guys have described, even in previous episodes, is a system of like, okay, you guys found a thing. We fixed it. We also talked to you the whole time we did, and we shared with you the challenges, and we told you why we couldn't fix this one part of it because it's an integrated part of the system or whatever. That kind of thing is both new, refreshing, and scary, right?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, all of you are used to coming from places where the PR control is very tight. It's like, well, we can only say so many things, and here's an NDA, and you got to sign, your life away. If you say anything, you're out of here, kind of stuff. And while Greg, you've said it before, there are things about the development of a game you want to kind of keep close to the vest so that you can, have it be ready the way you want it to be before you show it off. But so much more of this transparency is both making your job somehow easier, better, but also difficult and maybe a little unwieldy. Is that a fair thing to say, Faye? Do you feel like it's like, I don't know the right word for it, but it feels like the fact that you guys are going to be so transparent about this stuff, there's going to come a day where everyone's laughing at something that normally would be behind the scenes. Do you know what I mean?
My point of view, by the time that happens, and maybe it's already happening already, like I said, we've been kind of very upfront about the situation that was happening with the horses before. I don't know if I'll send you the videos if you haven't seen them, but oh man, they were broken. I think that the thing that I think about is, well, if they're laughing at it, hopefully we are already too. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of humor that goes down in game development. And if it's not something that we're laughing about and it means we landed something wrong or something shipped into a patch that is super broken and we didn't catch it, why not laugh at it also, I guess, is my take on it. I think there's nothing to be afraid of there, right? And it allows for this, I don't know, levity in the development of just things are going to go wrong, things are going to break, things are going to be bugged, and that's okay. And that's part of the process. And that's the other kind of side of my job is I see myself as almost being this like not quite a court jester, but a lot of my I see is like trying to like laugh, like be like, it's, you know what, I know that it's really frustrating that you've tried to fix this thing 6 times and it is hilarious right now. Can we just like take a second, laugh at it, and then try to get back into fix it?
No, it's a great attitude to have. I was just talking to somebody last week about how I can't remember the exact phrase, but they basically said sometimes it's just important to remember we are making games and we are making experiences that are meant to be fun, and we're all having a bit of a dream job moment. We should have as much fun as we can and not get too bogged down in all those details. But I have to imagine, though, as Greg, as somebody you're the dude being held to the fire by all the finances, by all the big shots, the people that are kind of overseeing, making sure this is going the way it's supposed to and all of that. I mean, there's probably some pressure on you to hold some of this back. And I don't know how much of that you want to talk about, but how much leeway do you have for this transparent community driven development of this game?
I mean, I have a lot of leeway. No one has yet told me, hey, don't say that. I don't really have a boss. It's just, we are kind of an independent studio that is funded by NetEase. So occasionally they may say, wow, that makes us nervous that you would talk about the game so openly, but no one has said no, or, oh, you can't say that. And honestly, the stuff we want to hold back, it's usually related to the story because we don't want to spoil it. We don't want to be like, oh, and then guess what? This bad guy's not really dead and they're going to come back in Act 3. Like, that's kind of sad to spoil that part because then it won't be fun when it happens. But almost everything else we're pretty open about.
Yeah. It's just such a different approach that I'm continually, I don't know what the word is I'm trying to come up with here. There's something about it that feels like you're exposed in a way that other games maybe aren't, because they're so tight-lipped about everything. And I think the
risks. I think people worry about the risks as saying like, well, maybe players will figure out that we don't actually know what we're doing. And I mean, players are smart. They already know that. Or maybe like some competitor
That's
is
not
going
a
to steal our
surprise.
ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe they worry like, oh, a competitor is going to steal our ideas. But you know, the I don't see a lot of that in this business. Like the stealing ideas, the ideas aren't the hard part. It's the execution that's the hard part.
Sure.
And then I think they just worry that, oh, it's going to be unmanageable. Like the players are going to be out there with pitchforks and we're going to lose control of the narrative and the story's just going to be players hate Project Ghost. But I feel like that's what the whole management part is you try to make sure that doesn't happen. Or if the players are out there with pitchforks, you change the narrative to, hey, we know we did something wrong here. Let's see if we can fix it.
Yeah.
To where it doesn't get to the point of like rioting or something.
Sure. Faye, you were going to say something?
And just that, one of the things that I'm really excited about as well is the ability that we have to try, and obviously we're not going to be able to get to everybody, unfortunately, but the ability to try to say like, yes, we were able to incorporate this feedback and we really appreciate it. And we didn't incorporate this piece of feedback, but here's why. Right.
Yeah.
And when I think about feedback collection and also just like players responding to companies like releasing information, a lot of it's based on trust, right? There's this and what it comes down to is that the trust that players have that we're making a game, and for MMOs especially, this is a group of players that I'm very happy to count myself among, that play the same game for decades, right? The people who play EverQuest who played EverQuest might still be like taking a look at EverQuest, right? Or they might still be like, oh, Lord of the Rings Online still has this incredible player base. Not to mention, of course, World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy 14 and RuneScape. And these are players who make their homes in these games.
Right.
So at some point, players are sort of like, well, we have to trust you to continue to like put expansions on our house. And we want to know why some of our suggestions weren't taken. I think that's fair to ask. And, of course, like I said, when games get really big, it can be hard to get to everybody. But the hope and dream is to be able to set up this communication where we can be honest in the, about especially like the big points that are coming in and things like that. We get to say why we didn't pick something up. And at the very least, even if players disagree with our decision, they understand why we made it. And that's like the best that I can hope for as a community manager. And that's the thing that I think about every day, every time I write a milestone blog or every time I, think about social media posts and things like that. The thing that I think about is showing just honesty at the end of the day. And we really have an opportunity to do that here in a new and exciting way. And like I said, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, this is my favorite part of the whole thing. And obviously this show is part of that. It's part of coming out every month and just talking about stuff in general. But I wonder in a time of a little bit of turmoil on social media side of things, there's just there are new options. There's Threads, there's Blue Sky, Twitter /X is weird, but still kind of the main one. And for this kind of short, bursty sort of hurry up and get your information out there. And you've got Reddit, and like you mentioned, Discord is essentially the rebirth of forums in so many ways. That seems like a lot to manage, and it's also very different kinds of demographics that you're reaching out to. There's some crossover, but for the most part, they're very different places. How much of that is a challenge compared to just, single channels that we used to have and, not having to worry about 50 different places that people wanted it to be put?
Right now it's fine. I'm really enjoying it. I mean, social media is definitely weird with all of the changes that have been happening. And it feels like every other year or so there's a new social media platform, and that do we invest our time into this, and are we going to be able to actually like reach people there and have good conversations with people there versus not, right? But I think we do have an Instagram, we do have Threads now that's connected to our account. We have Twitter, of course, it's where most people find us, and we have we've talked about things like TikTok and other ways to show what we're doing. And of course, at some point, yes, there is going to be a public Discord server. I don't have any new updates on that yet. Chat.
Everyone's always asking about that one.
Love you guys.
Comes up a lot. Yeah.
The thing about Discord is it's really good at targeting your existing audience. And we're still at the point where we're trying to build an audience. Like, we want to go broad so that people can find us and say, like, oh, this game sounds interesting. I think once we really invest in Discord, it's almost like this walled garden where we have to make sure we keep inviting people in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I always wonder about that a little bit, because some of the reason we got away from forums was to take it out of it being kind of a closed system, right? And now we're inching back in there, and there are ways, of course, to make Discords pretty open, and there's lots of little bots to help you manage people and moderate without even having to lift a finger. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why this is a better entry. It's also less searchable, less archivable. And we're also putting all our eggs in one basket, right? We're all just saying, well, Discord's the place, so this is where we're doing it, and we're giving another platform holder kind of control of all the information and data. I just have to think, regardless of how that stuff continues to evolve, and it will, that you guys are taking the right approach here to be able to say our communication with our fans is not platform dependent. We don't care where it is or where people want it. Where they want it, we'll go, and you'll get to see and hear and have, no matter where you end up, and get it in ways that is less piecemeal, that is less protective, that is all of those things that we've talked about as well. And I think that bodes really well for the game. I do wonder, though, this question keeps coming up in my mind. Does this have an effect on the actual game development? In other words, how much does player feedback, Greg, maybe this question's for you. How does player feedback, either funneled to you via Faye, or you just internally, people are hearing things or whatever, how much of that plays a role in our next milestone's going to include these 5 things because a ton of people asked for it? You know what I mean? Like, really rubber meets the road numbers? Is it a big deal to have that?
Big deal. I mean, that's how we want to develop, is kind of understanding where the pain points are. Like, here's a great example is right now when you play Ghost, parties generally stay together. That's not going to be the intent forever. But right now it's easier just to say, like, hey, we're going to make a group and just kind of stay with them.
Right.
But when people get separated, like someone dies or someone like goes over the hill, finding the rest of the group has been a challenge. Like, well, I don't know exactly where my party is. We're trying to avoid solving everything through like mini maps and that sort of thing. So we've had to invest a little bit in, how do I find my party when I get separated? Right now you do it by spamming. There's a flare button. You push the flare and it goes up in the air, and so you can kind of see people. That's not going to be our solution forever, but we had to add that pretty quickly because it was at the point where it's kind of detracting from being able to look at other stuff in the playtest, like just not being able to find your group.
Right. Oh, yeah, I guess you'd have to have a lot of stopgap solutions until you iron all that out, right? Yeah. But see, but we would never know this. This is a thing we wouldn't know at this stage on any other game, by the way. Nobody would know about your flares. So this is what I'm trying to get to, is that you guys are talking openly about, well, we had to do a Band-Aid. It's not going to be there forever, but we needed it in order to test this. I think players I personally find that extremely fascinating. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I love that.
I was just going to say, a less Band-Aid-y thing that has come up is a big challenge for Ghost, which we knew from the very beginning, was providing players with enough direction without giving them too much direction. Because the modern, they're not even that modern anymore, but Western MMOs have really taught you there's going to be a quest. We're going to tell you exactly where the quest is. You can just kind of go there and do it. And that doesn't work with our Blue Zone model because we don't know where things are going to be. And so we don't want to say, like, we're not going to have quests, hopefully, as lame as like kill 10 bears, but you don't know where the bears are. Are you just supposed to wander around to find bears? What if this Blue Zone doesn't have any bears? You're supposed to go find another Blue Zone. So we've had to think a little bit more about
Greg.
Ladybugs, then
you got to start with ladybugs. Yeah. Kill 10 ladybugs.
I mean,
anyway,
that's a great. That's actually
think about how to provide that direction to players even early on, of like, make sure they know what to do and kind of where to do it without leading them by the nose.
Yeah, you look at something like World of Warcraft, which went through some pretty crazy growing pains in those early years. But in those early years, you had, the Blue Zone concept, obviously not there at all. But this idea of, here's a quest. Let's say it's 20 beaver pelts. You got to go get them for me for some reason. We need them for the war effort. And they say it's, northeast of here. That's all you had to go off of. You kind of had a map and you could say, well, that's northeast, so I'll just go hunt around until I find it. That game's evolved to the point where, and very quickly with mods, but then later integrated into the game, ways of finding all of that stuff, map markers and circles that said, well, it's within this space somewhere. Or in some cases, just straight up more recent years, a straight up marker that you can see in your HUD that you fly directly toward and find the thing. I realize this isn't exactly community related, but I have this question about, at this stage, are you aiming for the kinds of navigation help that is that far, or are you wanting to pull back from that a little bit? Any lessons learned from how hard or easy it was to go find a thing before, and maybe we've made it too easy now, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we believe at FPC that we've made it too easy, and that players, I think part of the feedback of quests are boring, let me just get to the end game, comes from the fact that you're not very engaged. The combat is often trivial. Like, you don't really have to think about killing that beaver that you need to kill. It's not really tied into the story. It's usually some arm wavy thing about, oh, there's too many beavers, go cull the beavers, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so we are trying to think, like, really early on, how do we integrate these things into stories? How do we make them more interesting? How do players have to think a little bit and maybe even come up with a strategy rather than just like go to this point on the map, kill the mobs that are in the area? They're probably what you have to kill for quest credit, and then kind of rinse and repeat.
Sure. We had somebody in the chat room allude to a question that, Faye, I'd love to hear your take on. The idea of, we've talked about AI before when it comes to generative art or zones, or, which ways make sense, which ways don't, that sort of thing. But one of the applications for AI you hear about all the time is processing information. It's less about, I can make a pretty picture. It's more like, how do we manage our dental records here at my dental office or whatever? And AI is going to help us do that. Is there anything about large language models or AI as it currently stands, any of those innovations that you think are going to show up in the community side of things, a way to summarize people's thoughts, make that a better pipeline for you so you're not overwhelmed?
Really good question. When it comes to AI, I'm one of those people that gets a little cranky that, like, AI is doing creative things and leaving tedious tasks to people when it, in my opinion, should be the other way around, right? Like, the AI does some of the like the grunt work here that, like, isn't even work we would necessarily give to somebody. This isn't like taking a job, so that it frees up people to do the more creative things. It can be useful. There are tools that are out there that I'm really fascinated by that help to collect large databases of feedback and actually sort them for you, not just quantitatively, but qualitatively. And that's the thing that often gets lost in surveys is the good qualitative feedback. Because if you're sending a survey out to 6.5 million people, and you get even 75% of that population back, which would be an incredible survey response rate, for the record. But when you get that kind of feedback on that scale, it can be really hard to dig through qualitative feedback. And what ends up happening, not at every place, but it does happen, that people will start to go through and look for quotes that already support what the data analysis is saying, but don't necessarily reveal more about why the data analysis went that way.
Right.
So there are possibilities. I think it's one of those things where it needs to be, it's hard to say this early how many different options there are. A lot of them are still in development, especially with regards to, like, feedback collection or social listening, which is a different way of collecting feedback,
right.
Things like that. What are we going to integrate? What tools are we going to use? I don't know yet. I'm still looking at some options. I think it's kind of the way I am right now is I'm like, okay, we've got, a potential playtest coming up. We've got some things that we're working on. I want to make sure that, like, I'm ready and focused on that. And then the large growth, big picture, once we've hit our stride with playtesting is something that I get to, turn back around to look at maybe early 2025.
Sure.
But yeah.
It must be a little nerve-wracking to think about that day when you guys do your first public playtest and what that looks like. I'm sure you'll be prepared for it, but as a, again, this transparency development method that you're all using, it feels like that's going to give you an advantage. It seems scarier at first, but if it were me and you'd spent all this time essentially setting expectations, not necessarily setting them low, but setting them realistically so that people aren't, thinking that there's magic in a box, but then when the box opens and it isn't perfect, well, what happened to the magic? You don't want that kind of thinking out there. So the more you can kind of get people with you on this journey, and when that stuff finally starts happening, you can say things like, yes, we know the skyboxes are all effed up right now. That's being fixed. Don't worry about that. Don't look at the sky. look down at the ground. Like, I'm playing some of this out in my head for a reason, because I can see some of this happening, and establishing this now, I think, gives you guys an advantage.
That's the hope. Like, I'm really looking forward to the day when we do a play test, and it probably won't be this year, but I look forward and we're like, hey, not only is there no NDA, but go ahead and stream it. Like, that's fine. We would love for you to stream it, because then even more players will get access to it. And then even people who aren't in the play test can say, you know what, I think the animation's a little janky, or I can't tell the spell effects, I can't tell what is happening in combat because there's too many spell effects. Like, we would love to get feedback like that early, while there's still time to fix it before we're out.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is even if you're dead on what you guys decided, it's because it's a living, growing thing. You're never going to be able to just sort of sit and go, okay, we did it. We made our game. We're done. That's not how MMOs work, which is obviously it's its own set of challenges and circumstances. But I don't know why it's so fascinating to me to think about how you're going to communicating this stuff. Because my experience with working with companies who make MMOs, in particular working with Blizzard on various things, it's not the same. In fact, they were famous for really keeping people tight-lipped. And Greg was like the rebel, was like, Ghost Crawler said a thing and the whole internet loses their mind because you were just a little bit forthcoming about something. And that's very different. I'm not even saying they're doing it wrong for them. I'm just saying it's so different from what you're planning and already doing here. And then if you guys end up delivering the magic in the box, right? After all the openness, all the feedback, and the game is special, like it's really something, then you've crossed off two things that I think companies struggle to do. And I realize this whole podcast is very, it's very pro FBC, but I mean this genuinely as the host.
The hard-hitting journalism.
Yeah, I don't want to. It sounds like a softball thing, but I really do think there's strength in that, and there's longevity in that, and there's also just a daring new way to do it. Nobody's doing it this way. And I've had some people say, "Yeah, go ahead."
I think about White Albums, right? Like the Beatles, other people have made the White Album, like. No theme, no songs. You're just buying it based on the brand name of like, well, I like the Beatles, so I trust this will be good. There are a few studios that could get away with that. I think Blizzard is one. Rockstar, some of the Valve games where you'd say, I trust this company so much, I'm just going to buy what they make and assume that it's good. We are nowhere near that with FPC. We're a brand new studio, brand new IP, new team, I have a tiny bit of celebrity, so maybe like 46 people would buy the game based on me being associated with it, but that's it. So I feel like we have to build up this groundswell of interest. Otherwise, we're going to be one of those 10,000 games on Steam that comes out and like nobody discovers it. Mm-hmm. We have to make sure there are lots of people who are really excited about the game. And then, someday when we're super successful, then we'll make our White Album.
I can't wait for that. Faye, how do you deal with toxicity? Just generally, like how is that that's going to be a challenge regardless. I don't care how open anyone is.
This TED Talk prepared now.
Yeah. But it seems hard. I don't know. Like I deal with my own little version of that all the time, and it's difficult. Yeah. It affects me. So how do you do it?
I actually really try to stay away from the word toxic because I think it is a word that doesn't helpfully define exactly what's going on. I want to give a shout out to Riot. They have released some absolutely incredible, like, industry defining player behavior studies that have been from the data they've collected on League of Legends and Teamfight Tactics, Runeterra, shout out to Runeterra crew if you play any TCGs. But one of the things that they found is that, like, toxic behavior is typically not this, like, when most people are, if there is a toxic interaction in chat, it is because somebody on the other end is having a bad day, and they're usually like a single time offender, right?
They're not like a bad person that's out there trying to ruin everyone's game.
Right.
Right.
They're having a bad day. And I've had a very strange career trajectory, but I did used to work with kids. And one of the things that I always said out loud to myself, especially when it was like a particularly rough day, is, they're doing the best that they can do today, given everything that's going on in their lives at this time.
Right.
And we get to see even less people, like, of a person's life in games. In Discord, we know only exactly what they're telling us, right? In the games, we just get to see their avatar when they log in and maybe some stuff in chat, right? We know less about them than in any other sphere of, like, really working directly with people. So when I think about that, I mean, obviously there is behavior that is unacceptable. I am not talking about that. There is that.
Sure.
That's a different thing.
Right.
But when I think about the times when there are these, like, misunderstandings, the thing that I have found to be most helpful is quite literally just reminding everyone involved that there is a whole other human on the other side of the keyboard. And we know there have been so many studies done on this that we lose the ability, unless we're actively thinking about it, to, like, perceive real humanity. When we are in these online forums, we can't see people's faces. There's even in Zoom and voice chats and things like this, the upper and lower bounds of our voices are sometimes filtered out, and that's where a lot of emotional communication takes place. So when we lose the ability to communicate with people like that, it's actually much more difficult for us to act with empathy. So a significant portion of my job is reminding people, hey, that is another person. And I would like everybody to take 2 seconds to just calm down, take a deep breath, step away from the keyboard, and then, we're going to come back and work on this.
It's obviously a very healthy way. Yeah, it's a very healthy.
We're going to agree
thing.
to disagree.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to. It's a healthy way to look at it, but also you as an individual have had to internalize that, I assume, because that's hard to do initially.
Yeah.
If you come to it kind of raw and you're not thinking about it in the scientific studies way, which there's a ton of it, right? I always think of road rage or something, where it's the same kind of problem. We're all hidden behind these big metal cars, and we think that we know everything about that jerk who cut us off, and we really know nothing about why they're speeding. It could be a million reasons, and I think that's kind of just really important for people to remember. But I don't know how somebody in your position is able to do that and not internalize some of that stuff. And I don't know if that's a thing you can even speak to, but is that a challenge?
It can be. Kind of being immersed in, like, the online discourse can be exhausting, right? So one of the things that I'm really strict with myself about is, like, getting outside time. I think we joke a lot about, like, go out, touch grass. I make touching grass like a personal priority. I need to, like, get out, interact with people off the internet. Which is also part of why I'm so happy to, like, when we have these company offsites and stuff, it's really cool to get to see my coworkers, like, in person. So there's that, again, that, like, reinforcement. Oh, you're a real human.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of thing only works if you have it really established from the get-go, right? Yeah. And that's part of the social contract that your players are agreeing to when they come into your space, which is why you also have moderation, things like mute, like speaking to Discord specifically, you have like mutes and kicks and bans, and you have warnings, you have, usually like extensive moderation teams to kind of come in and diffuse situations that are trained on conflict resolution, which is a whole separate skill set that you can go get trainings on, right? That is what people do for jobs.
Yeah.
But I think, the way that I think about it also is like just in any job where you're like significantly immersed with people, and especially sometimes people that are having one of the most like emotional reactions, people are increasingly turning to online chat spaces, especially after 2020, to help kind of process a lot of what they're going through. And, in a way, if they feel safe enough to come to a space that I've built to do that, that's kind of a compliment, right? It's like, oh, you feel really welcome here, you feel really open here. But there's also this sort of appropriateness level of like, okay, we have now crossed into medical advice, for example. I cannot give you that, but I
Right.
can provide you resources. Please go over
I'm
here.
not a lawyer.
Yeah.
Right, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a mental health professional. Please.
Sure.
I'm a community manager.
Yeah. I'm a healer. I'm a
Um,
healer in an
yeah.
MMO. Think of it that way.
Yeah, right. Or healer main. But I think the big thing too is like, and I fun fact, a lot of community managers are also friends with other community managers. So we have a lot of people who do a very similar job to what we do, and making that connection to just be like, hey, can I talk to you about this thing that happened, and just like get your take on it, like a vibe check, or even just like, I don't want to talk about work. I just want to go hang out with somebody who could
Who
understand
gets it? Yeah.
if they wanted to, like if I wanted to talk about it. So again, I think what it comes down to is having human connection, having like in person, face to face, human connection. And it could be about talking, or it could be about like sitting next to each other on the couch, not looking at each other, scrolling TikTok and showing each other the funny ones. But that like time in person matters a lot to sort of maintaining, you know, positivity, maintaining optimism, because optimism is such a core component of this job.
Oh, I imagine.
The
Yeah.
the belief in the goodness of people at the base of it is how I get to do this every day.
Yeah. Very challenging in the game space. I mean, Greg, instead of touching grass, you go touch chickens, right? Do I have that right? That's how you stay connected to the world. You need a minute. Go get an egg out of that cage.
Yeah, I mean, I live in a very rural place. There's a lot of outdoor work to do. It's a
Yeah.
little mini ranch.
Yeah.
You can hear the chickens right now. I think someone has just laid an egg.
Oh, that's great. Well, you'll have the breakfast tomorrow of champions. Well, excellent. This has been a fantastic discussion. I know that there's way more to cover, and down the road, we'll certainly come back to this as things get a little thicker in terms of getting close to public stuff and getting close to a finished game. There's a lot of chatter in the chat about how, we're not going to be playing this game for years or something. Greg, is there any kind of timeline in place right now? I'm not asking for a commitment, but like a timeline that says, if we keep going the way we're going, there's a good chance somebody might be testing something in the year 2025.
I mean, we're playtesting this year. We're going to playtest every month, and next year, we'll have lots more people participating in the playtest, and that will help us know how far away we are from being done. We may find out, oh gosh, we're going to need a lot more content.
Yeah.
Hopefully not. Hopefully we're on a good trajectory. We're confident that we can make this game pretty fast compared to a big, a Blizzard, a Riot, places like that, because when you're a big studio, there is a lot of overhead, and it kind of forces you to move slowly. There's a lot of bureaucracy. That's just what comes along with a success. So we are small and scrappy, and we hope that we can make something pretty quickly. But at the same time, like, we don't want to disappoint players. Like, we don't want to be one of those MMOs that came out like, oh, it had such promise and they rushed it, and they should have let it bake for another year or two. So we understand people are impatient. That's great. We love it. The reason we are not playtesting more sooner, the reason we don't have our Discord up already, is not because we're cheap or lazy or anything like that. It's because we need to make a game. And yes, playtesting is part of the game, but there's a lot of other part that goes in too.
Sure.
And because we're small and scrappy, we need to make sure we can do it all.
To that end, Faye, is there a place that you would prefer players right now or prospective players contact or get in touch or comment or any of those things? Until there's a Discord or until there's these other established places.
So I mean, they're welcome to ping on any of the like official social media channels, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Threads, wherever. There is a fan run Discord, and I do want to give a shout out to them. So Shanti and I and a couple other devs tend to hang out in the fan run Discord as well. People are always welcome to chat with us there. I will ask the person who made that if they have posted the link anywhere. But I think that's definitely the place. You can also there's I think an email address on our website that I also take a look at, but those are the places that are most immediate, I suppose. Right. I think what Greg said, just let it cook, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we're cooking.
It's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, the oven's on. We're checking. We're making sure it doesn't burn. Everything's fun. I like the cooking. The cooking scenario is a good one for this. Well, it was fantastic having you on, Faye. I'm so glad we got to finally have you as a voice. She's always in the background. We're always I'm back and forth and stuff, but to have you here has been a real pleasure. So thanks for doing it.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time. And yeah, I see you all in chat. I do. And I will go collect the questions and make sure if we didn't get to them today, that we get to them in another episode or another medium of question answering.
That sounds wonderful. Big thanks to the chat as well. And Greg, always good to see you, sir. I'm glad you're doing well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing your interview with Metzen if it's up already.
I think it's up now.
Nice.
So I can finally talk about it. I interviewed Metzen over at Blizzard about their new expansion, and it was a great experience. One of my favorite things was walking around going, I hear you're doing a thing with Greg, and I'm like, yeah, and people are excited about that. So that was a fun crossover. Spending a little time in
Tell them they can send their resumes.
See, we're open about everything, including jokes, okay?
Oh my gosh.
Everything, including jokes. Anyway, go check that out. And also, if you are interested in the other 9 episodes of this show, make sure you check us out, frogpants.com/street. You can find links to the video versions. You'll find links over on fantasticpixelcastle.com as well. And if you're looking to contact the show, real easy to do. Send us voicemails, texts, that kind of thing, on over to 801-471-0462. That'll do it for us. Until next time, we'll see you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Yes. Get more at frogpants.com.
Well done, everybody. Nicely done. That went great.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yep.
Y'all have been holding out on me.
It is fun. It's a good time, right? We keep it light and loose.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
New format for the show. Every month we just add a new person.
Yeah.
And we never get rid of anyone. So
No.
we just add more people.
Well, I mean,
It's just going to be
Zoom,
going down the line.
Yeah,
right?
Zoom lets you do 1,000 or something like that. I don't even know what it is. It's some crazy number. I can't imagine trying to manage that. It would be a nightmare. But yeah.
Oh, man.
I love having you guys on and doing this every month. And before you know it, it'll be September and we're doing this again. So
Yeah.
It's so fun. You guys make it so easy. I mean, both you, Scott and Faye. I just have to show up. It's great.
Yeah. Well, and then you make it perfect by showing up. So look, everybody wins, right?
It takes a studio.
It does take a studio. You guys are awesome. I will see you soon, and we'll get you some files and stuff, Faye, here in a shortly, so you'll have that stuff. And big thanks, you guys. It was awesome talking to you. Everybody else, check out that Metzen interview. I just put it up, or they just put it up. Let me actually go see. Is it on the YouTube channel? I'm going to go look and see. Is it under Warcraft? The Warcraft channel? Yeah, there it is. Chris Metzen on the World Soul Saga, one-on-one with Metzen. Go watch it. Let's see if we can hear the first part of it.
The orcs would work, but
No, I didn't either.
it's been a privilege working on Zergorks.
Hi, I'm Scott Johnson, the host of the World of Warcraft podcast, The Instance, and... Oh, Lord. All right, anyway, that's me, and we did a thing, and it was super fun. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We will see you next time. Take care. Be nice. Do it all twice. We'll see you then. Bye.